first impressions and everything are essential because people kind of make a split-second decision, and then afterwards it takes so much effort to overcome that inertia in terms of changing what that initial viewpoint is. So, first and foremost, financials are obviously something that investors are highly, they highly prioritize because that's the critical element that they're analyzing. And so making sure that your financials are clean and have everything where they reconcile and all the backup documentation is definitely a key element that is important because even if your numbers are great, but they look disorganized, the level of confidence that somebody has in it from the beginning, you're starting off on the wrong foot. But the reality is that that's kind of, in a lot of ways, secondary because most of the time, private equity is not going to see your financials up front. You're first going to, typically when you sell, an advisor or somebody else will go and have relevant buyers sign a non-disclosure agreement. Once they sign that agreement, then they'll be able to see actual numbers. So what typically happens is their first impression tends to be whether it's your actual storefront or more likely than not, your website. And people will make split-second decisions around, looking at your website and saying, hey, this company feels like it's from 20 years ago, or this is a cutting-edge business. And it starts with a Google search, right? So it's not just your website, but when you're on a Google search, what's coming up on your reviews? What is coming up in terms of, whether it's a lawsuit or an investigation or anything else like that. And so when you think about how do you curate it, aside from there are reputation management folks that can help with coming up with strategies of improving your ratings and all of that, a lot of businesses, when they have enough time in advance, will spend some time and energy actually hiring a communications or a marketing, advertising, PR firm that will help them get additional good publicity that can help tell their story in the best light possible. And ultimately, it may be purely just for, with the intent of when an investor Googles them to, what do they see and what's kind of the initial impression that they get, from it. But, the reality is it goes throughout. So, let's say you have a manufacturing company or whatnot, eventually somebody will, before buying a company, do a walkthrough. And so, whether it's neat and tidy, all those things send a signal around what's the culture in the organization, and gives a little bit of a sense to the buyer of what it would feel like to own the business, right? And, you walk into a house that's staged beautifully, it has one feeling. And in fact, I heard yesterday people saying that they bake cookies, to create that home feeling. And it's a very intentional experience versus walking into a house that, a hoarder just lived in and there's no preparation. Clearly, you're going to have a very different, response and value ultimately.